Today, Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast as you're driving along in your car, your truck, or going along in public transport. In this essay, I'd like to talk about and try and maybe define what is a member of the globalist elite. What do they look like? What do they do? Where do they come from in society? What sort of lives have they led? And what sort of education credentials and so on do they have? And I've been surprised that some of the, in my view at least, some of the keenest social commentators that I'm aware of online are struggling to define what, including people like Matt Goodwin, who you'd think would have it nailed down tight, but seem to struggle, in my view at least, struggle to define. When they say, what is a member of the elite? Well, they're a college educated. No. So let's see if we can get a little bit closer to it now. If I look at all the people who I know who think globalization is a good thing or have nothing bad to say about it, even if they maybe not are directly in support of it, they all have, and I'm not talking about the green-haired 19-year-old college kids or something. I'm not talking about, they don't know anything anyway. And so if they go along with it, it's for some sort of abstract emotional reason that they don't really comprehend. But I'm talking about the people who would be, the string pullers or supporters of the string pullers, or at least who be in a position to push back against it, but who don't. So let's sort of have a look at where they come from. Now, this claim that a college education means you're pro-globalist or a lack of one means you're against globalization, that's bullshit. I don't know why. That's a sneering sort of view that the so-called elites have, or the pro-globalist activists have. Because if you oppose globalization, then you're a Nazi, which means you left school at 14 years old, and you're just one of the ordinary people, one of the hoi polloi, one of the plebs, one of the feral lowlifes that aren't worth pissing on. But that's the view that some people have. So coming back now, those who agree with or do not oppose globalization and see no problem with it. When I say globalization, I'm talking about the climate change, the mass migration, the suspension of the arbitrary laws and due legal process, suspension, politicization of the police, judiciary, and so on. They either disagree that those things are happening, or they support them in some way. But I think the real divide here of the people who the so-called elites is that they're unaffected by any of the negatives of globalization. If their energy bills, they're paying their electricity bills double or triple or something, then they've got the sort of income or the pension that can easily cater for that. So they spend a bit more on electricity, but they're saving the planet, or they don't care, or the intentions of the people trying to save the planet are presumed to be good, so it doesn't matter. But it doesn't affect them. Their lifestyle, their cash flow, their wealth is not affected by it. Now, people at the bottom who are making an ordinary wage, and they may not care really that much one way or another about globalization, but they do care about the effects of globalization policies on their lives. That doesn't make them against it per se. It makes them against policies that make their lives harder and less endurable. So that needs to be really understood. So a lot of the people who are dismissed as being against globalization, in fact, are not. They're against policies that make their lives worse. The policies of globalization do make people's lives worse, therefore they're opposed to it. But to say that they're therefore Nazis or something is just ridiculous, absurd, absolute nonsense. But coming back to definitions of the people who support globalization or could be deemed as members of the elite. So they have enough wealth where they're not affected by things like increasing the climate change policies, that sort of stuff. Now, the mass migration coming in to the West isn't in areas where these people live. they're not living next door to people who are defecating in the gutter and urinating on their front lawn. They're not in those sort of areas. These are people who, the entry level to the tree-lined street in Sydney at least is between 2.5 and 3 million entry level. That's not at the upper end, that's entry level into the tree-lined street. So these are people that live in these tree-lined streets. They live in there. They're the only non-white faces they see are the rich Chinese Communist Party generals or the Indian Brahmins, the super wealthy monopoly owning Indian Brahmins who have a place there, who only spend some of the time in these places, and they're very quiet and they keep to themselves and they don't bother anybody. Those are the only people the non-white people, and they don't really have anything to do with them. Thinking of people that we know who their only interaction with non-white people is with elite brown people, rich elite brown people or well-to-do brown people who also live in the same tree-lined streets, and so really they just don't have any interaction with people. Like the only interaction they ever do have is people who come and clean their swimming pools or mow their lawns or clean their houses and clean their waterfront mansions, that sort of thing. Those are the only interaction they have, and then they're just hired coolie flunky labor. They come around, they slip them $100 cash, and off they go, and that's the end of it. And the cost of hiring these people is, they're cheap to hire, and they maybe don't do that good a job, but who cares? They're cheap, and they chatter away in their own language. They either can't speak English or they've got one person in the group that speaks a little bit of English and they interpret it and for the others. And, they all arrive in a minibus and out they come and do the cleaning, back in the minibus, and off they go. It's a labour hire scam, cash under the table payments, all that sort of stuff. But these people in these areas, they don't care. So they're not affected by mass immigration. They see supplies them with cheap people to do the lawn mowing. And they regard this as being a useful sort of service that they can get on demand. And some of them will say, well, it took me a week to get someone to come out to fix my fence or to fix my swimming pools. Whereas these people, the illiterate third world peasants, I can get them to come out the same day or the next day, and they cost me half as much. Okay, maybe they don't do that good a job, but hey, who cares? So they see that that these people are there as coolies and flunkies and Sherpas for their convenience, and they see that as a good thing. What's wrong with mass migration? I get a cheap Sherpa to carry my bags up the mountainside. Hey, what's wrong with that? So really wealth is the divide. Now you can add that some people aren't necessarily wealthy, but they've got, say, a public service job or tenured at a university, something like that. They've got that for life. They're okay paid. They're not rich, but they're okay. So they've got no uncertainty in their lives. That's the next tier of elites or supporters of, and thus, you can sort of collectively put them in the wider elite class. They've got a job for life that pays, say, I don't know, double the average wage, for example. They're going to inherit, from when their folks die. So they're going to live in a nice enough, maybe not the tree-lined street, but heading in that direction. There's not many brown and black people around them. There's some, but there's not many, and they're wealthier as well. So they're not the type that are going to defecate in your front yard or urinate on your lawn or have screaming and shouting carries on in the middle of the night. They're not those sort of people, and they're not going to have. They're going to try and set fires in the middle of the lounge room to cook their food and this sort of stuff, or have these big chopping boards with machetes as they cut up the cabbages. They're not those sort of people. Those sort of people are in the poorer areas. So So that's the next thing, apart from absolute wealth and where you complete insulation from the day-to-day lives of these mass migrants that are coming in. The next tier is there's no uncertainty. You've got a job for life on a decent enough income. You can, yeah, I mean, it's a bit annoying maybe to pay the extra for the electricity as it goes up, and maybe you've got to make a couple of economies. Maybe you only go out for dinner twice a week instead of 3 times, but that's enough to cover it. So they maybe make some minor adjustments, but their lives go on. There's no uncertainty injected into their lives. There's not roaming gangs of black and brown people defecating in your front yard or pissing on your rose bushes and sort of thing. You don't have that to worry about, and again, you don't have much. There just isn't that uncertainty in your lives. Now you can go and switch right to the other side where you've got the college kids, again the pink-haired lesbians or whatever, who are into that sort of stuff. The other supporters, which are again more passengers in the overall bandwagon, are say, single left-leaning women with uncertain careers and jobs. They could be laid off tomorrow. That sort of, but they see that the wider, if we welcome all these downtrodden, oppressed people, then that creates a wider social protection net of which we can hide and shield under. So therefore they would go along, maybe just on that basis alone. And it's a very emotional sort of take on things. But does a college education mean you're a globalist or you're part of some managerial elite? Well, of course not. What are these? College education is it the gender studies? Is it the sociology thing? Is it the lesbian dance major? Is it African American studies? Is it black lesbian musical studies? Because there's about a gazillion. College courses. Is it all the low IQ kids that are sort of swept into from high school into college? Remember, there's 3 out of 4 college kids, if not 4 out of 5 college kids in the West today, wouldn't even have made it through senior high school in a merit-based system. So we can't call these some sort of they've got a college degree. They're so clever. They're so bright. Look at that intelligence. IQ is at 5 million. No. Most of these kids don't have an IQ of 100. So college education is in itself nothing to do with. Now, if you come from a family that's wealthy enough that they pay for your college course, and you don't have any college debt when you leave college, and you get shoehorned into a nice, secure, well-paying job when you get out of college, that would be a member. But again, now we're back to wealth and removal of uncertainty in your life. And if you look at some of the biggest advocates for that aren't necessarily rich in their own right, the biggest advocates for globalization, a lot of these are just talking head stooges. They're doing it because they're paid to do it, and what they believe or don't believe in may be another matter. But they're doing all right out of this, so why not go along with it? These are the sort of people who are given, you look at their careers and they move directly from not even a day of unemployment in between. They move from an NGO to a public service department, then to the United Nations, back to the public service, back to an NGO, back to the public service. And they have this absolutely unbroken run of well-paid, prestigious employment, maybe only 2 years here, 3 years there, and that sort of stuff. They get book publishing deals for books that you think, what? So somebody published that crap? They get all sorts of chairmanships of this board, and they go on a quango, as a committee member. They get all these gifted benefits. So they've got, they're not short on money. They're rich, but they're short on money. But they've got no uncertainty in their lives. They've got employment for life, effectively, and because of that, they're again not exposed to. So the people that don't support globalization, you can dismiss them as the hoi polloi. I suppose as a total proportion, because they might tend to be a bit older than those who do, but as a total proportion, you probably find less college degrees there. But they, it doesn't mean they're all morons or feral creatures or anything like that. Some of them would be, as indeed you find amongst those who support globalization. I mean, some of the college academics that I've met that are fanatical supporters of mass migration and that climate change, that sort of thing, I would regard them as being the lowest of the low. Some of them, they're so one-eyed and so fanatical and they're zealots in the extreme, and I wouldn't, I don't think much of them, and I would regard them as people who have only through a stroke of good fortune you could declare them to be human beings. But coming back to this thing of those that aren't in the globalist camp, they're the ones who are losing out. And the ones who are gaining from globalization is a very small proportion. And to call them some sort of managerial elite is well, I mean, Joe Biden. I mean, look at the people around Joe Biden. I mean, for fuck's sake, that they claim to have moral high ground. I mean, look at AOC and those sort of people. They're full-throated supporters of globalization. What would you call them? The geniuses and the managerial elite. Oh, they're so clever. No, they're not. So the people who aren't on board have uncertainty in their lives, and they have a reduced, declining, uncertain standard of living, and they have to exist and live next to the sort of mass migration people who are defecating in their front yard and are pissing on their rose bushes and are having these late night party, but people who do get up at midday and they don't go to bed till 2 o'clock in the morning and making all sorts of noise. They do have to live next to these people. They do have to live in streets where armed gangs of brown and black people may roam up and down with impunity and the authorities don't touch them. They do have to put up with that. They do have to put up with groups of brown and black people breaking the windows of the shops and looting and rioting. They do have to put up with it, whereas in a tree-lined street they don't. So wealth and lack of uncertainty in your life, that's a dividing line. But very few people have the wealth. I mean, that's always been the case. There's always far fewer rich people than poor. But those who don't have uncertainty in their lives, their jobs for life and this sort of thing. Now, those people also form a very small, and I would think less than 5% in certainly in my assessment in the community. So less than 5% of the people have that certainty and or wealth, and those are the only supporters of globalization I'm aware of. Now, again, you can have people like fanatical trade unionists or leftists or the green pink-haired college kids and so on, but they don't know what they're talking about. They've got their standard of living is being shot to pieces and their future is being shot to pieces, but they can't see it. It's all the diversity. So really, again, coming back to who are the elites? They're the ones who are wealthy and or are being used as agents and flunkies and stooges to implement the globalist project, but who have jobs for life and lack of uncertainty. So that lack of uncertainty in your life, or conversely, the very uncertain daily lives for the others, that's the divide as I see it. But I'll be interested in seeing your comments below. You've been a Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.